like the sentimental aspect of it, where like we got him the week after we got married.
So it's like signifying like the start of your family.
Yeah. And when we got married, we moved to Colorado, and immediately we went to a shelter and we got him, he was, I don't know, 6-7 months old as a puppy.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any friends when we moved to Colorado because we just got married and moved to Colorado, didn't know anybody. And so like me and Champ, we would go on hikes and we'd hang out. And then like Lexi worked like weekends because she was a barber. And so, and I worked nights on weekends, but I had like weekend days off. So it was just like me and Champ going out exploring, just us two. I was such a freaking loser, but yeah. So when he was a good dog, but
yeah,
once we had kids, it was like
so much more maintenance.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of maintenance. You're like, I can't give you the amount of walks or playtime you need.
No.
You bark at things, and I already got a baby trying to sleep right now. And now you're barking.
Yeah.
Like I just put the baby down. It took me 40 minutes and you're freaking barking right now.
That's how he was. And he wasn't old enough, or like our kids weren't old enough. They loved Champ, but they weren't old enough to like take care of him or have like fun moments with him. Riley was 5. Yeah. Riley was 5 when he died. So she just turned 5. But so Riley misses him still. But when he died, yeah, it was more of like it was really sad.
But relieving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just jokingly, but 10% of me was serious, talked about euthanizing my dog.
Yeah. I was more sad than I expected it to be. I thought that when he went, it wouldn't, but it was like, we had him for 12 years and he was always a good dog, and he was always nice to people, and he was just like a constant, it's like when your favorite shirt gets lost that you've had for
I love
years.
How you just likened your dog of 12 years to a shirt you lost.
It's like, that's been with me. I wore that the first time I did this thing or did that, or
totally
the favorite underwear. I don't know. I loved Champ. He was a great dog.
No, I'm with you.
We're going to get another dog.
You are?
When we buy a house here, I think we will. But
you guys close?
There's a couple that we are very interested in. I mean, I don't know. I need like $4 million. So I don't know how close.
Jeez.
I mean, but that's not like an amazing house here.
Yeah.
It's nice. That's a nice house, but $4 million.
Oh, it's crazy.
Doesn't get you far. Like in St. Louis, if you spend $4 million on a house, you're buying the estate that's insane. Here, it's like, oh, you got a 3,500 square foot house.
Yeah.
So we're trying, but when we buy a place, we will get a dog. But the one thing that I'll do is I will be very dedicated to training the dog when he's young, because we did not do that with Champ. With Champ, we didn't. So
you don't want to get a home here that's like 1.5, 1.8, and then throw $500K into a remodel?
I mean, no. I would if the right thing popped up. But like, we just looked at a house in Maui Meadows off market the other day that they were asking $2 million for, which is a great deal for the right person.
Yeah.
But it didn't have a pool, and it doesn't have an ohana, and the house needs rehabbed. And so like, as we're adding all of that up in our head, well, first of all, to get an ohana, you have to go through all the permitting process. So you're probably a year out from even building, and then you're going to pay, $700 to $1,000 a square foot to build it. So an ohana, it's going to cost us $700,000 to build. And then
it's pretty close to $1 million here.
Yeah.
Cause you can go $500 a square foot all the way up to $1,000 a square foot, depending on the finishings and everything.
Yeah. And then you throw in a pool, which is going to be another $300,000. And then you're into it.
Isn't that crazy here? Is that normal? Like in St. Louis, what would you pay for a nice pool? Yeah,
we got an estimate at our last house on a pool. We ended up not pulling the trigger on it, but it was $250,000. But it needed it needed grading. That was going to be nice. Like, it was going to be a nice pool, but it needed like trees removed.
That makes me feel better about the quote I got for my house.
Yeah.
Because like, we're ripping that out, redoing the entire pool. It's going to be twice as wide. epic, nice Baja deck.
Yeah.
Travertine edge, like
how much?
My entire project for the entire backyard is like $320K. That includes a pergola. They're also excavating that hill back there. So we're going to have another 26 by 80 feet of actual usable yard.
Yeah, that seems like a great deal.
And they're redoing the wall. And that includes 10K of landscaping. It's like, there's a lot in that.
Yeah, that seems like a great deal to me.
Cool.
Yeah.
I thought we were getting like hoodwinked.
No, I mean, you can do a pool for 80 grand in St. Louis too, though, but that's just like a standard pool.
Getting the job done.
Yeah, you might be able to do it. Yep, do it for less. But ours was gonna, because we had 4 acres, but they'd had to tear down a ton of trees and built up, like grade it the right way. It would have been a pretty hefty.
Here they're worried about like blue rock because it's like really thick, hard rock. They have to get out with excavators.
Yeah.
That's gnarly.
Yeah. So, but on that house that we were looking at, we were like, well, by the time we're all into it and it is what we want it to be, you've got $1 million for the Ahana, you've got, a couple $100,000 for the pool. Then you're going to have to renovate the house. It's going to be another couple $100,000. We're all into it for 3.5 anyway. So it doesn't.
That's true.
Doesn't make sense.
So they might as well get something done at 3.5.
Yeah, I mean, if the perfect opportunity, if a house came up that we could buy for 2, that was a solid main house, pool,
you could throw $400K into it and make it just the home of your dreams.
Yeah, then we would do that in a heartbeat.
Okay, because that's kind of what we did here. It's like I think we had honestly like a great experience with our home here.
But you bought this for 1.4.
1.565.
1.565.
It was on the market for 1.8 for 12 months.
Really?
1.8. And he rejected 3 different offers. And so we found out what those offers were.
Really?
It was like 1.3, 1.4, and then at 1.5, he considered it and then finally rejected it after 30 days. So we're like, what if we come in at like 1.565?
Yeah.
And he accepted it, but with no contingencies. And we're like, that's fine. But we knew that it was going to be like us having to add so much into it. We ended up spending probably $400,000 up till now. And then we're about to put another 320, and redoing the whole backyard. So we're going to be $700,000 into it.
But it's a $3.5 million house when you're done with it.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's not bad.
Not bad. Yeah. And now we got a bunch of equity in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we want to go somewhere else now, it's like, we were talking about it, like we can buy a house in cash in Oahu or like get a tiny loan. Which is kind of nice.
That'd be amazing.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It'd be so amazing.
But this kind of segues into our topic of today, because analyzing a deal to buy for your family is way different than analyzing deals for investments, right? Yeah. The thought process behind it, the need to have a profit, the window of time you're looking at for the value of the home, all that stuff. Cause like I loved having conversations about this, but you're literally like, when you buy a home for yourself, you're not thinking, when I get this fixture, I need it to produce this much, in profit. It's like, no, I like the fixture, so I'm going to spend more on it. Yeah. But like, I know it would be fun to talk about, cause I don't know what a good deal looks like.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. No, this is like real estate for dummies, and I'm the dummy, and you can teach me all about this.
Yeah, no, I'd love to talk about it. Well, and first of all, when it comes to your personal house, that's another reason, like, we don't want to do a rehab. It'd be fun because we get to make it exactly what we want. But again, that perfect house has to pop up, and we would rather have exactly what we want. And so that means that we might have to buy at market value, because when it comes to a house that is exactly what we want and we're trying to buy it off market, I don't know if I'm making sense at all, but when we buy it off market, like, those are few and far between. So you just are picking and choosing can we get this to adequate, Yeah. So like when we bought our house, cause we bought a really nice house in St. Louis, and because we find deals all the time in St. Louis, that was kind of one of our thoughts. Well, let's find a house that works for us, that we can renovate and move into, and we already have a substantial amount of equity, and we'd have good houses come through, but nothing matched like what we were looking for. Right. And so even if we had renovated it exactly how we wanted it renovated, it still didn't hit all of the criteria of this area, this lot size, this openness of it. And so we ended up just paying full market value for a house in St. Louis, which still ended up doing really well for us. We only owned it for a couple of years and sold it for $200,000 more than what we bought it for.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this, like before we jump straight into like deal analysis, finding deals for like investment, like how you actually analyze something. I'll say like when you start making more money and you start learning how much, and I hate to call it this, but like control you have over preference. Cause like when I didn't have money and I was making $100,000 a year, I had very little ability to meet my preferences with purchasing homes. And it's like, no, I'm okay with this in this area because that's all we're going to get. But now when you make money, you can go, okay, what can I get for $4 million?
Yep.
You're like, well, I want to be close to the ocean. Oh, but I can't be close to the ocean if I also want a big home with a big yard.
Yeah.
And so you're starting to like, now it almost becomes a burden, the preferences you've built.
Yeah.
And we were navigating this week and we were looking at homes. I was like, we need to let go of preferences here because still, even though we've acquired more than the average population, the people that really have no restriction on preferences are the people that are buying a $15 to $20 million home.
Yeah.
Those are the people really, it's like, no, here's where I want it. Here's the type of fixtures I want. Here's the size I want. Here's like, it's like there's no restriction on preference, but no matter what, you're going to have to weigh out the pros and cons and decide like, this is what I'm willing to forego for this thing.
It's wild.
I know. It's like you're always weighing out the trade-offs.
Yeah. 4 million here. You don't get to pick preferences.
Doesn't do much. No.
Yeah.
You're like, you get Hawaii. You're welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're welcome. Why are you being entitled? Prick?
So like our growth process into our houses was we lived in Lexi's parents' house. It was actually a little like farmhouse he bought is probably an hour and 20 minutes outside of St. Louis. So they didn't live there. So that was nice that they had a house in town, but they bought this little like farmhouse out in the country. Cool. Yeah. So we got to live there for free for 9 months when we just didn't have any money. It was when
big house?
No. It's a modular home.
Okay.
Yeah. So we lived in a trailer home. Yeah.
Okay.
So
modular is a nice way to put it.
Oh yeah. Okay. It was nice. Like it was cool. It was on a foundation and they had done like so, but it's on a really cool piece of property. So
was this before or after the mullet?
I forgot.
Is this the reason for
this? Is the reason, dude. I wear cutoff jeans and t-shirts and drink Coors Light, man. That's who I am through and through. But
you're Morgan Wallen.
It was a modular home. It was nice. It's on a foundation. It's on a really cool piece of land that they bought. It's this old like rock quarry that got filled in. So it's like a beautiful little like lake on it. That's cool. It's an awesome piece of land. I absolutely love it. But it was like an hour and 15 minutes outside of St. Louis, but we didn't have any.
There's no options.
Other options. So we lived there when we first moved from Denver to St. Louis for free. And that's when we started investing. And so I was driving, an hour and 15 into our projects every day.
That's nice for like low expense while you're building something.
We were so fortunate. And a lot of people don't have that opportunity where it's like, I get to live for free. There's
a lot of options that people don't consider.
Well, and we definitely made a sacrifice. One, we were living in a modular home, even though it does not feel like a modular home. It's beautiful. I'm not knocking it all. But the big thing was we made the sacrifice living an hour and 15 minutes outside of town. Like it would take 45 to 50 minutes just to get into like an area where there's a fast food restaurant or like we were in the middle of nowhere. So there was a huge sacrifice in doing that, but we didn't have another option really because we didn't have any money. But that was when we got started in real estate. And then the first house that we bought probably 9 months, 10 months into being in real estate was it's a good house. It's probably worth $400,000 now. It's a little 1,800 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath house, but we bought it for I think we bought it for $205,000 and we put 60 into it.
Nice.
Yeah. And so it wasn't the perfect home by any means. It was, but like you said, at that time, that was, hey, we can be all into this house for 260 and it's worth, now it's worth 400. Then it was probably worth 325.
Dude, those numbers don't even make sense to me. They literally don't make sense to me based on living in Hawaii now.
Yeah. So we were into it for 260.
Wow.
Had it and then lived there for only a year because this was as real estate just was picking up for us. And then from there, we actually kept that as a rental. And then we moved into kind of like our dream home in St. Louis. It was a really beautiful house.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So we didn't go after the perfect thing right away. We went for like, hey, what's functional? Yeah. What works. And so,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let me jump into this just because I love this conversation. I have like so many more questions to ask about this, but I want to like move on. How do you find a deal?
Find a deal?
I'm sorry. We talked about finding a deal. Like, how do you know when you like, so we talked about, wholesalers are sending you stuff, real estate, probate attorneys, bowling alleys. You got all the sources. Okay. Deals are coming into your lap. How do you know a deal? Like when you see one?
Yeah. So part of it, there's a lot of answers to this question.
It's not just, damn, I could make that thing look good.
Which I think there's a lot of people like that. That's like, oh, that, I can make it look, I can rehab it because it's distressed and I can sell it. And they have no idea what they're doing. They have no idea what it's worth on the back end. They have no idea what the rehab budget is going to be. It's just like, oh, this is a distressed house. I'm going to buy it and fix it up and sell it for more. But it's a lot harder than that.
You might win, but then more often than not, you might lose.
And what a lot of those people too, they're swinging their own hammer and stuff. And so they feel like they've won. But when you add in like, oh, you've spent an extra 50 hours a week here for the last year, like I literally worked a second full-time job to make $30,000 in profit, where you could have just went and got another full-time job and made more.
Made 50 grand. Yeah.
So like it doesn't add up. But a couple of things. So like you've got all of these connectors that are sending you deals. The first thing that I would say for anybody that is that's going through that, like I think that you should start analyzing as many deals that are sent to you as you can. Like in some, most of the time, those deals aren't going to make sense. There's that rule. I think it's called the rule of 100, where it's like, it takes 100 deals in your inbox before you get one, you buy one or something like that. And so,
which is why you need flow.
Yeah. It was why you need DealFlow. It's also like, as you grow, it's probably not a great use of your time to analyze every deal because so many deals are not good deals. But at the beginning, I think you should analyze as many as you can because you're learning the areas and you're figuring out what the price of houses are, like when you're running comps on houses in this neighborhood and this zip code and this. And so like now for me, I can quickly get a deal sent to me and I know the area. I know about what houses sell for. I know what the type of rehab it's typically going to be. And I can quickly look at, like, if I were to get a text of, hey, Cameron, I've got this house. Here's the address. Here's my asking price. I could easily be like, oh, that's worth diving into more. Or I'm hey, thanks, not interested. And so
that's like skill of the trade though. Like it's like anything else,
that's just over time.
You have, what would be another example of this? It's like, if you put an advertisement in front of somebody that's like brand new, came out of college, like they're looking over ads, they're probably going to be like, I think this is a good one. It's a good advertisement, but then you put it through the data and you realize, oh, it actually wasn't. Mm-hmm. But then you put somebody that's like spent, 10, 15, $20 million on thousands of ads. They're going to know right off the bat what's a good advertisement, because why? You have the hours put in, you have that immediate instinct now. And I feel like over time, you have to build that instinct with any type of skill. Mm-hmm. And I think that makes sense. You're like, let's get repetition of analyzing so that you can learn that instinct, but you don't have it yet.
Yeah. So you have to get reps in. But one of the things for people, like we were just talking on a DealFlow call today with the group, and there's a girl in there who's crushing it. She's getting a lot of deals sent to her, and she's like, there's so many deals. I don't have time to analyze them all. Which is like that can happen because you get, and a lot of them are bad deals.
I think a lot of people want that problem.
Well, yeah. And so a technique that I used and other people have used in the past is to even think about, is it something worth diving into, is just looking up the Zestimate, which the Zestimate is not the ARV. Don't ever use the Zestimate to determine the ARV, which ARV is after repair value, but is taking 80% of the Zestimate. And if they're asking less than 80% of the Zestimate, it might be worth diving into a little bit more. So that's a quick way to discern, like, hey, is this even worth diving into? But
so what is the Zestimate usually based off of?
It's just sales in the area, but it's not super reliable. In St. Louis, the Zestimate's typically way lower than what the house is going to sell for.
Oh, it'll sell for more than what the Zestimate
for
says.
Sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
Probably 50, 60 grand low is what it is. Cause the Zestimate typically is pulling from houses that haven't been rehabbed as well. Cause it's just, I don't think that AI or whatever knows like what's a good house, what's not. So you might have a rehabbed house that sold at 300. You might have a as is house that sold at 225. The Zestimate's going to say it's a 260 house, where it's like where this rehabbed is.
I was trying to read that for I know it's like a big side tangent, but I was trying to read it for my house because it said 2.9 for the Zestimate, but it doesn't know that I put in all the money that we have thus far. And it also doesn't know that we're about to do this project. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know how realistic that Zestimate is.
It's terrible.
Like,
I would never use the Zestimate. The only way, like for an off market deal though, where it would, like if I was being sent a ton of houses in Hawaii and somebody sent me this house for yours at 2.9 for 2.2, I could really quickly say the Zestimate says it's 2.9. What is 2.9 times 0.8? Let's just do this real quick. 2.9 times 0.8. 2.9 times 0.8 equals 2.32. So if it's under 2.32, then it's something to dive into. It's a very like just quick way to not even see if it's worth your time. Yeah. So I don't want to say analyze.
So there's like a few filtering processes. Yes. You got the big graded filter where it could like a lot of sediment can still get through, but we're getting the big stuff out of the way.
Yes, exactly. Okay. If you have a problem with DealFlow in a good way where so many are coming in, that's a really quick way to be
50 of them out of the way.
Yeah, because some people are asking retail for a house and you're like, I'm an investor, I cannot pay retail. So that's just a really quick way to figure out, like, does it make sense to dive into more? But let's pretend you find 15 houses or whatever, one house that you're going to dive into. Like you're getting deals sent to you, you're going to dive into a house.
It passes, let's say it passes that test.
Yes.
So you're like, okay, cool. No, it's past the phase one. Like this is worth looking at.
Yeah. So I'll just explain my process.
Yeah.
And maybe, people can build around my process or build exactly like my process, but being in Maui, also being remote. So what typically happens is I'll get a deal sent to me. And it'll have the address and it'll have their asking price. And it should, if it's a good wholesaler or agent, it'll have pictures of it. And so I will quickly, I will run numbers on the house. And so what I mean by running numbers on it is the very first thing I'm doing is I'm looking at the pictures of the house. And I'm not actually analyzing the rehab when I thumb through the pictures first. I'm just trying to get a feel for the house. What's the layout like? What does the house look like? Because after I see that, now I'm going to run comps or comparables on the house. Because I want to find out what is this house worth when it's fixed up.
Yeah.
And so, I can't do that if I don't know what the house looks like. Yeah. I can't use a 2-story house as a comp if my house is a ranch, Yeah. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get on the MLS, and I'm going to try and figure out what the house is worth. And so there's the MLS, which is going to be the best way to run comps. There is a, Deal Machine, which you can run comps on Deal Machine. There's PropStream. You can run comps on PropStream. There's Privy. You can run comps on Privy. There's other resources out there that you can run comps on, but the MLS is far and away the best place to run comps. Now you cannot do that unless you are a realtor and have your realtor's license, or realtors are allowed to have assistants on their license. And so if you can get access to the MLS via an assistant, now you will get in trouble if you're an assistant and you're not acting as an assistant. So you do have to, I don't think they ever really check, but you do have to, like if you were a realtor and I was your assistant, I would actually have to help you Yeah, that's, so, but you can be an assistant for a realtor. But I'm going to get on the MLS.
How do you help them?
Like if they need help running comps or, pulling CMAs.
Oh, so you'll do some of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little back scratch.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So if you get on the MLS and you're finding comps. And so a couple of rules for comps. And this is where I see so many people, this is the biggest thing is if you are off on what the house is worth after it's fixed up, then it blows up the entire deal. So, and I see so many people that are off on what the house is worth. They think the house is worth $300 and it's only worth $270. So there's a $30,000, that might be your entire spread, And so you have to know what the house is going to be worth. And so what you do is a couple of things, and this is really important. And a lot of this is granular. And so I'm sorry if people are getting bored with this, but you're looking for comparable houses. And when I say comparable, like that means you have to be comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges.
Yeah.
If your house is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath brick ranch, you're comparing it to other 3-bedroom, 2-bath brick ranches.
Yeah.
You're not comparing it to the house 2 doors down that is a 2-story, 4-bedroom, 3-bath with vinyl siding house. Like it's just it's a completely different house. And so it's going to sell for different.
Yeah.
Fortunately, in the area that I invest in, a lot of the neighborhoods are just tract homes where it's like, I don't even know what tract homes mean, but it's the same builder. He has 4 or 5 different models. And so you can find multiple that look very similar to yours and they're the same layout as yours and use those as comps. And so
homes that have sold.
Homes that have sold. That's within the last year. So so you're looking for homes that have sold within the last year that are very similar to your house. So I'd say same bed, baths, same square footage, same lot size. This is incredibly important. Same school district, same zip code, same neighborhood. You want to check and make sure that it's not in a flood zone or the comps that you're pulling it from aren't in a flood zone. And you're looking for fixed up comps because you're going to be fixing your house up.
Right.
So you're not looking for an as is comp or for a house that's destroyed because you're looking for fixed up comps.
Why do appraisers do that though?
Oh, because appraisers suck sometimes. They will, but they'll add value. Like, they'll add value if your house is fixed up and they're using a comp that's not fixed up, but it's not the correct amount of value. We've only been really screwed over by appraisals a couple of times, but and typically like the market in St. Louis is pretty hot where people put in some sort of an appraisal gap or they will waive the appraisal.
It's hard. Like, Maui Meadows, there was a point in time where it was like homes hadn't sold for 8 months. Mm-hmm. So finding a comp was really difficult. So you're like, how much is this actually worth? And I remember it was like really hard to figure that out because there wasn't a whole lot of traffic or like a lot of movement. Do you run into that ever with?
We do in rural areas. But I'm a very simple investor, and I'm not a risk taker when it comes to investing. I guess I'm a risk taker in the sense that we scaled really, really fast. But when it comes to buying houses, if a house that I'm looking at doesn't have good comps and I don't know what it's worth, I'm not going to buy it.
So it's if you have the right information and enough information.
Yes.
You make purchases.
Yes. Or I will buy it, but I'm going to throw out
way down there.
Yeah, a really low offer. Like we just bought a really great house in a neighborhood in St. Louis that, and I was very honest with the guy, and he understood this where, I think we bought it for $80,000 and it needs probably 75 or 80. It might even need a little bit more than that. But I ran it as a $200,000 house. It's for sure worth more than $200,000. Because there's 2 comps or 3, there's multiple comps around the $200,000 range that aren't fixed up. But I also don't know what it's worth fixed up. Is it worth, does it being fixed up make it worth $230? Does it make it worth $250? I don't know.
Yeah. And
so I told him like, I have to run this as a $200,000 house. I paid a little bit more than I should have. If it was truly running as a $200,000 house, I kind of just used a little bit of my own intuition, knowing that it's going to sell for more than that. But I wasn't going to just say, well, hey, these all sold for 200. My, fixing this up is going to make it a $250,000 house, because there's no data to support that.
Yeah.
And so that dialing in your comps is so, so important. And again, you get good at that just through repetition and doing it over and over and over and over and over again. And I also think that it's really important for people to hear is when you are like comping a house, that you, sorry, I lost my train of thought. When you're comping a house, you cannot be emotional about it.
Right.
Where people get so emotional about my house is going to be better. My house is going to be this. They think that their house is going to be the best in the world and it's going to sell for more than anybody else's. And it's not going to happen. Or it could happen, but you have to use the data. So that would be like the first thing is you just when a deal's sent to me, I'm finding the comparables. I'm finding what this house is worth once it sells.
Get
and
the
again,
facts.
I'm looking at updated houses, same bed, same bath, same square footage, same style, similar lot size I like it to be within a quarter of a mile. I'm willing to go out to a half a mile if everything else matches. I'm trying to think what else. So some things to think through too is like, that I see people miss all the time is, hey, if my house doesn't have a garage and the 3 other comps that are fixed up that I'm using as comps do have garages, my house probably is not going to be worth as much as those. If my house, doesn't have a finished basement, but the 3 comps that I'm using all have finished basements, my house is probably not going to be worth as much as that. Or, hey, if one of the houses that sold for, really high in the neighborhood, has a detached, 2-car garage and mine doesn't, like that house is going to be worth more. So you have to keep all of that in mind. And again, not get emotional about properties.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And another thing that I'll say when it comes to this is if you're planning on only doing like a make ready rehab, which wouldn't be a really super nice rehab, you're like, we're going to keep the kitchen, we're going to keep the bathrooms, we're going to paint it, we're going to do floors.
Someone can move in and it's livable. But they're going to have to probably do more work to it to make it their preference. Yes.
So, but if you're going to do that, this is again where I see people screw up all the time is they're taking these high end, not high end, but rehabbed houses that have new cabinets, new backsplash, granite countertops. They've taken out a wall. They've opened the wall, the kitchen into the living room. They've renovated the houses and it sells for $300,000. And I'm like, okay, that's the comp that, my ARV. But then they're only planning on doing paint and floors and they're going to leave the bathrooms. They're not going to do granite countertops. Your house isn't a $300,000 house anymore. So you have to keep all of that in mind when you're running comps. Again, this is where I see so many people lose money is they're off on their comps. And then once you're off on your comps, you're in trouble. And so a way that I have kind of helped get us dialed in as a company on doing deals is
like mitigating risk.
Mitigating risk is we have a best case, base case, worst case scenario calculator where we're like, hey, worst case, like what's the lowest this could sell for based on the data that we have? What is the worst case that this could sell for? What's the base case? What's like, hey, this is probably most likely. What is the best case? And so we run it through all 3 of those calculators and we have to make money on every single one. Yeah. So base case, we don't need, or best case, we don't need to make a lot of money. But I still want to be protected in case it sells for worse than, what we even expect. Like worst case. Yeah. We still want to make money on worst case. Yeah. So then it's like, it's kind of the, I think we've talked about this before, but the asymmetrical bets where it's like, hey, I can make a decision and the outcome could be really, really good. Or the outcome could be just not bad, but not good. I'm probably going to make that decision every time because the pros outweighs the con. Yeah. Or like I could make a decision and it could be really, really good or really, really, really bad. Then that's a decision I'm probably not going to make because the pros don't outweigh the cons. And do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, so, totally.
So that's kind of, we use that in our business where we want to make asymmetrical bets where it's like, hey, if we sell it for best case, we can make a lot of money. But if we sell it for worst case, we're still, I mean, it's not fun. We're working for basically free, but we still are making a little bit of money. So we use that when we're running comps. So that's the very first thing is I get a house sent to me. I'm figuring out what is the ARV of the house. The next step is I'm going through the pictures in more detail and I'm putting together a rehab budget. And so I don't have time to talk through a rehab budget, but when you're putting together a rehab budget, you are taking into account everything.
Yeah.
I see, again, people miss this all the time where like doors, like I see people don't put that in their rehab budget, which doors are $300 a door, for 6-panel doors. And so you've got 10 doors in the house. That's $3,000 that you missed. Light fixtures,
solid core doors.
Light fixtures, windows, roofs, floorings, paint, kitchens. And again, where I see people mess up all the time where it's like, if you're using a comp that has a new kitchen and you're just refinishing the cabinets, your house isn't going to be as nice as the comp that has a new kitchen. And so like you're putting together, again, on the DealFlow call today, we talked about that, where he was looking at a house that was, worth $500,000, but his budget didn't account for new bathrooms, new kitchens. And I'm like, so your house isn't going to be $500,000 when it's done, because you're not getting it up to par with this. So you can,
and he didn't want to do that.
Yeah. He was trying to make the deal work. So I think that's what a lot of people do is they try and make the numbers work.
Oh, got it.
A lot of times I won't even look at asking price because I just want to put my numbers together.
So that kind of happens when you don't have a lot of deal flow.
Yeah. You have to
try and make what little you have work.
Even with a lot of deal flow, we still sometimes do it where it's like, I don't like looking at the asking price because I don't want to try and fit my numbers into the sellers or the wholesaler or the agent's box. Like I want to, I want to just without knowing what it is, tell you where I'm at. Cause that's, I think the most honest way to do it.
Do you like pipe drive? Like, what do you use?
What do you mean?
Like, or pipe drive? Well, I mean, what is it called? PropStream. Sorry.
PropStream?
Yeah. I mix it up with another software.
No, I don't love PropStream. I use the MLS for everything.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
just manually, you just manually do it, run
number. What do you mean?
Your numbers like through MLS? You just,
yeah.
Okay.
We'll manually do it. It works great. I think most investors that I know that are at the level that we're at, like you have to have MLS access. You have to be able to, you and your team have to be able to run like true comps and not just via PropStream. Because PropStream, it can, but it's just not, the data is not as good as the MLS.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So right now you're not, are you kind of like thinking there's probably not going to be a lot of deals that I can analyze that have a long-term rental potential right now?
Yeah, there's not. There just truly is not a ton of deals. Interest rates make it super tough. Yeah. Now, if you have a lot of liquid cash, you're a high W-2 earner, you've made a lot of money and it's in the bank, you can pay down and to where it does cash flow. But there's just not great deals out there to keep as a rental property.
And you're also just leveraging a lot less when you do that. You're right. So it's like whereas maybe you could have done 10 deals, you're like, I can do 1 or 2 if I leverage all of that money that I'm making and saving up. So it doesn't really do a lot to replace your income when you're doing deals like that. No.
Yeah. Cause you're just putting that back. The best way, in my opinion, to build a rental portfolio is to do it through the BRRRR method. Which is essentially, I don't think we've talked about the BRRRR method. I love the BRRRR method. Do you know the BRRRR method that well?
It's buy, renovate, refinance. No, close. I don't know.
Buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat.
Rent, refinance, repeat.
And so what I love about what the BRRRR method will do is if you're finding deals where we talk about buying deals out, which is typically 75% of the ARV minus repairs. But let's just use a house, like a $200,000 house, for example. So it needs $50,000 in repairs. So your offer on that is probably going to be about $100,000. My offer on that would be $100,000. So I would buy that at 100 with a private money lender. I'd put $50,000 into it. So I'd be, and this is a really like easy way of explaining it. There's obviously way more granular detail to it, but we'd put $50,000 into it. We'd be all in for $150,000 of private money lender's money. There's no note on the house. The house is worth $200,000 though. And so then we would take it to a bank and we'd say, hey, we want to refinance this and pull all of our money out. The bank would send an appraiser to the house. They would appraise the house. They'd say, hey, it's a $200,000 house. We'll give you a 75% loan to value loan on it. And we'll give you $150,000. Then I would get that $150,000 back in the form of a loan from the bank. I'd use that $150,000 to pay back the private money lender. Oh. Then I would have that house without any of my own money into it with $50,000 in equity. And now it's a cash flowing rental. So that's how we've done, all 65 of our houses has been, we literally, that's not true on one, when interest rates raised, we had to leave more money in, but on probably 59 of our 65, or I don't know how many houses we own, but we've not left a penny into it. Honestly, there's been times where we've made a lot of money on them, where it's like, hey, we bought it so deep, and we, after the rehab, we were all into it for 60% of the ARV. So like, let's say we were into it for 120, like that example. Yeah. And they appraised it at 200 and they came back and gave us a loan for 150. We would take the 120 and pay back the private money lender. And then we'd take the other 30 and just put in the bank.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah, it was great. That we did that multiple times. And I think that can be really dangerous for somebody that's not good with money, where it's like, I'm going to take that $30,000 and go blow it. But for us, I was like, I'd rather have that $30,000 that I'm using for rehabs or something, because I'm paying 12% on my money, where the bank, I'm only paying, it's at 4%. Now it's not at 4%, it's 7.5%. But I would rather use that money and could get more out of it, and kind of, what's it called? Velocity of money, like use that money to make more money. This
is why I like and I never reference Grant Cardone often, but I really like Grant Cardone with the way he kind of talks about spending. Is he only really ever spent 20% of his income on, and everything else was either saved or invested. And he lived like he was poor. Yeah. And I love that, because 80% of his money is going towards reinvesting, making more, and growing. So now if you're making, $50 million a year and you live off 20%, you're living off of $10 million a year. So it's like, that's a great income. Yeah. How did you get there? Living off 20% of your income. And I think a lot of people, we go, oh, this is my money. So even when they start a business for the first time, they go, the business made this much money. This is my money. And they don't separate the business income from themselves. And so they just end up spending it. Yeah. And instead of going like, no, you could have a business that's 5x the size if you treated it like a business, and you're like, no, I'm only going to take a profit margin of this amount, and I'm going to decide that early. Yeah. I feel like, that would be something that I would recommend anybody getting into any kind of business, including real estate investing, is like, start by going, what percentage am I actually going to take from this? And what am I going to put back into growing the business so I have more down the road? Yeah.
That goes back to hiring people and investing.
All that stuff.
I think that's one of the reasons that, we did, when we started making a lot of money, we did buy a nice house.
You wanted to say it.
What?
You wanted to share how much?
No. When we started making a lot of money, we bought a nice house. You're funny. We bought a nice house, but outside of that, we're not big spenders at all. We don't go we live in Maui, so we're spending more now, but we're not big spenders. Yeah. And we reinvest all of it. We reinvest all of our money. And I think that's how we were able to scale so fast, was we were making a lot of money and we were living in a small house. Even before we bought that house, when we first bought our first house, the one that we bought for 200, we rehabbed and then we moved into, we probably could have afforded a $1 million plus house. Yeah. But instead we were like, we're going to live for free. Yes. And we're going to buy this house. And then we did splurge on a house. But even splurging then wasn't, because we were approved for so much more, and we didn't, we bought a nice house, but it wasn't what we could have bought, what probably a lot of people would have bought. I'm also not naive to the fact that that real estate is as great as it is dictated by
the
market. And so I want to make sure that in case of a rainy day, like if everything fell apart tomorrow, we would still probably be good for the rest of our life.
That's awesome.
Which is
not many people can see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Sammy and I were talking about this. Like, we're like, how cool would it be to not have a mortgage?
Yeah.
Like when we were looking at homes in Oahu, I was like, how cool would it be to buy a home in cash? It's not settling a lot, using the equity we do have to get a home. And I'm like, that'd be pretty awesome to not drop $8,000 plus a month on a mortgage.
Yeah, changes everything.
Yeah. Like that's great. The stress level, just knowing that's not even there.
Yeah.
Is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anyways, I know it's a big tangent. Where were we when we were talking about like analysis and stuff? Like,
rehab. Going through the rehab.
So you're breaking down BRRRR for me.
Oh,
and you really you really helped me understand that. So, how does that tie into current markets? And I guess like that's not really happening for you right now.
Yeah, the BRRRR method's dead.
Yeah.
I love the BRRRR method. So
because
I'm
you can't get a loan at an appropriate interest rate to be able to cash flow it from a bank at this point.
You can't pull out all of your money in cash flow for the most part. There's some areas still in the United States that you can. Most areas you can't. You can be creative and rent by the room or do Airbnb or something like that. But then you're building an entire other business, an Airbnb business or rent by the room business. And so for long-term rental properties, the BRRRR method is tough to do. Now I think that there will be a time where rents catch back up to like the price of houses. Cause right now it's cheaper to rent than to buy by a mile. Like, we're spending $10,000 a month in rent on a house. And if we were to go buy a house right now that, is where we want to buy at, we're looking at close to $30,000 a month.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Bro, that's crazy.
Yeah.
What do you think the mortgage on like the home you're staying at, you're paying $10,000 a month in rent. What do you think the mortgage would be on a home like that?
Well, I mean, I know, I did some research. So it's probably a $3 million house.
Yeah.
So if we were to buy that, you're looking at 20,000.
That's insane.
Yeah. You're looking at 20,000.
That the mortgage is double.
Yeah.
Rent.
Well, but the guy that bought our house, he bought it in 2018 for 1.3 million. And then I saw that he refinanced. Sure.
So for him, he's cash flowing fine.
Yeah. He's probably at 2.6% interest rate and he's doing fine. He's doing fine, but
it just is interesting still. Like why doesn't the rent to grow with the market like that?
It will. Interest rates have only been high for X amount. And so if they stay high, rent will gradually catch up. Okay. Yes. Because if you look at like the history of renting versus owning, it's been pretty much in line where renting and owning, it costs about the same. Right now it's way more expensive to own. Granted, you have a house that's building equity, you're paying down the loan. So there's more to it than just that.
Sure.
But I think rents will catch up. And then when that happens, then BRRRRs will work again. Or if interest rates drop, that's where there could be a lot of money to be made is if rents continue to increase, interest rates drop, then, you could be cash flowing a lot. We on probably the first 45 houses that we bought those in 2020 and 2021. And we got locked in at a, 4% interest rate on a 30-year fixed, and rents have gone up in those, and those are cash flowing like crazy right now. So it'll happen. And that's why I think that like learning how to find deals and renovate deals, like the exit strategy, you can change based upon the market. Mm-hmm. The fundamentals of finding deals and rehabbing deals is always going to be the same. But then when, let's say, interest rates drop, it makes sense to rent again. Rents go up, it makes sense to rent again. Now you can start saying, well, I'm going to start keeping these for rental properties. If interest rates were to go back to 3.5%, our business would completely change.
Yeah.
We would, right now we're probably 70% flip, 20% wholesale and 10% keep as rentals, because we are still keeping rentals, just putting a lot more money into them, down on them.
Oh yeah.
We would probably be 70% rentals. Like I would buy and hold everything.
Why do you think people are stubborn? Like about, I don't want to do fix and flips, like, or wholesaling. Like what do you think makes people just go like, I don't even want to do that? Because
it's active, but so is a rental portfolio. So is a rental portfolio. So I think a lot of people have, bad representation of, like, they see something on Instagram where it's like, hey, here's passive income, buy a rental property. And it's not passive.
I've just heard so many people like, I'm not really into flipping, or I'm not really into like wholesaling. And I'm like, why? Like,
yeah, it's gotta, there's definitely like flipping is active income. So you do have to work, you have to find the deals, you're turning it over. But honestly, out of most of the people that I know right now that knocked it, they're all doing pretty rough with their multifamily syndications, funds.
Really?
Yeah, it's just tough. It's a tough market out there. And the thing is flipping, like, if you're running your numbers right, and also I think like you saw in 2007, people are scared of 2007, 2008, 2009 happening again, but the people that got burnt on that were like the commercial, like people building subdivisions that had, that were doing 300 houses. If you're doing 10 houses at once, or, I think we got 16 going on right now, but, and if you have analyzed those all right and the market shifts and it shifts even dramatically, like, we're still going to make money on all of them. It won't be what we think we are, but like, market drops 20% in a period of 6 months. Like, okay, we're basically working for free for those 6 months, which would suck, but we're still going to be okay on them.
I mean, there are people making $100,000 a year that had 7 homes that they owned, with percentage interest rates they should have never gotten from banks that underwrote those. I don't think that would happen again based on all the things that, I don't know, maybe it would.
Yeah. I think flipping in some circles, it gets a bad rap because it's active income, but so is everything. So is running a fund. So is a syndication. So maybe it's like rental property.
A level of denial maybe that people have about, like,
Yeah, you're just not owning the asset forever. But what's great about flipping is if you do it right, you can make a lot of money flipping, and then you can take that income and invest into somebody else's syndication or somebody else's fund, or you can buy your own rental properties, I think, and have some sort of asset there, because you don't, when you make that money, it's not backed by an asset. But the other thing people talk about is like the taxes that you pay on flipping. They are pretty high, but if you have a rental portfolio, you're able to offset your income with depreciation of your rental portfolio. You're able to offset a lot of your income, and there's ways around.
If you're paying taxes, because you made a lot of money. Exactly. You made a lot of money. So
exactly. I get mad at people all the time. They're like, what? I don't want to pay that much this in taxes. And I'm like, well, because I was actually one of my mentors. I told him that, like, after one of our first flips, we made $100-something grand on. And I was like, I want to figure out how can I figure out not to pay tax on this? What do I have to do? And he stopped me and he's like, it's like, you made $100,000. Like, did you ever think that you were going to make $100,000 in, one flip in your life? And I was very new to it. And I was like, no. And he's like, just be happy that you made $100,000. Like, he's like, if you had to pay $25,000 in taxes, like, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah.
You're still up $75,000.
Yeah.
And so I see that a lot with people that are just starting out. They're so concerned about taxes.
And when you start making enough money, then you can learn about
exactly. That's exactly right. It's a process where, like, at the beginning, that's the same with like the way that I have people all the time ask me about LLC structure and the way that, like, do you have a different LLC for every house? How do you do this? How do you do that? And in my mind, I'm like, you are so far ahead. Like, when we started, we just opened up an LLC and started buying properties in that. Maybe not the safest way to do it, and we didn't have the most protection, and then once we started making money and we started building a rental portfolio and having assets and bringing in a lot of income, probably 8-9 months into it, that was when we were able to sit down with an attorney and pay them a bunch of money to set up our structure. And we set up a a trust for our kids, and we, you know, and so like, it's
Nice.
just a natural progression that you will figure it out, but you don't have to have it figured out to start. You don't have to have all the tax loopholes figured out to start. Just go out and make money, and those things will naturally happen.
Yeah, I know. Like that's exactly it. You know, I kind of tell different people, when you're profiting $400,000 or $500,000 a year, then you should start looking at really advanced tax strategies.
Yeah.
But until then, you're not going to be able to afford an attorney that costs $75,000 or whatever it is for all of the things that you need set up.
That's an expensive attorney.
Well, well, no. Yeah. So my guy, first year, so he's a financial advisor, and and a part of it is the attorney fee. I think it's like $25,000 or something, or $30,000 for the first year. There's a lot that goes into it, but I think my first year I saved $250,000 in taxes, you know, so
it's worth it.
That was a good trade-off, you know? And I was like, wait, my first year, and we weren't even like, I think we tripled in our business, like the next year.
It's amazing.
You know, so, but those strategies, like, I asked my financial advisor, I was like, cause I've sent friends to him and that have signed up with him, and I'm glad they did. I'm like, how much does someone have to be making from their business to be able to work with you and have it make sense? And he's like, $400,000 a year of profit. And it's like, but you save a lot when you start setting up those strategies, and you have the trust accounts, and you have a way to protect assets too. It's asset protection. That stuff's so worth it, but you have to make money first. And everybody's trying to solve problems 10 steps down the line. It's like, you haven't solved problem number 1 first. Start with that, and then get there. But it's very interesting, you know, cause I feel like, even, you know, talking to Eric, who's one of our DealFlow clients, he's doing a 6-figure spread on his first flip. I think he like bought it for $500,000, and it's got, or even maybe a little bit less, and it's got an ARV of 800.
I want to say he bought it for upper threes. He's putting
375. That's what he said.
He's putting 200 into it, and then going to sell it at 800. I think is where his numbers are at. But
he's pretty stoked on that.
Oh, dude, that's amazing. It's amazing. That's a big deal for his first one.
I know, but he was like, I want to do, like, hearing Cam that he did these bigger deals. Like, why not start there? And I was like, that makes a lot of sense, man. Like, I like the way you think.
I wouldn't suggest that to anybody. That's a big deal.
He's a smart guy.
He's way smarter than me. Way smarter. And like, he's like, I just want to rip the Band-Aid off and go for it, which I'm all in for that. But that's a big deal for his first one.
So most people are probably doing like 30 to 50K spread at first.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's still like our bread and butter. Our bread and butter.
Do a lot of those.
For sure. That's our bread and butter, is the 30 to 50K spread. We definitely have, like, the ones that I post on Instagram are the big ones, you know, like,
Hey, everybody look at this one.
Yeah, exactly. The ones that I talk about are the big ones. But
what's the biggest spread you've ever done?
I don't know. Probably, we've had multiple between 100 and 150. But I mean, out of 400 deals, like, that's still probably,
it's huge,
2% of our deal. Like, we've probably had 6 over 100,000.
Okay. Worst deal analysis you ever did?
I mean, again, we haven't lost money on hardly any. I think we've lost money on 3 or 4 houses
out of 400.
There's been multiple where it's like, we're making 5, 10 grand, 15 grand, and
you're not stoked on those. You're like,
no,
shit.
Those suck. I hate those. Cause it's just like, we're worked for free. But, I mean, we did lose, we've had 2 that we lost over 20 on. And both of those had to do with foundation issues. Oh. Yeah.
So what do you know now going into analyzing a deal that you learned from those 2 mistakes?
One, I bought off of pictures.
Okay. So you didn't walk it, or?
Didn't walk it. That was stupid of me.
So if you had walked it, you would have known?
100% would have known.
Was it just like, what was wrong with?
Just the walls were bowing in, but the pictures didn't tell it. The wholesaler didn't tell me about it. He was a guy that I trust. He was newer, so I don't know if he even noticed it.
Okay.
But yeah, it was just, there was a lot wrong with it where I bought it off of pictures. I thought that, and I bought it for really cheap where I was like, I couldn't make the showing, but I knew that I wanted it. And so kind of to have him not show the house, I bought it from him before he shopped it to everybody else. And just shouldn't have done that.
Were you just kind of moving too fast that you kind of broke some of your own rules?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Sure. Yeah. We walk every single house that we buy. We don't buy off of pictures.
So whether it's you or somebody that you have boots on the ground, well, you obviously don't now, but
somebody on our team is walking every single house that we buy. But on this particular one, I didn't. This was when I was still actively in acquisitions. I didn't have the time to go walk it. Still made an offer. Ended up having pretty terrible foundation issues and we ended up wholesaling it because we got into it and realized like, hey, we can either spend, you know, the next 4 months rehabbing this property and lose $20,000.
But then you're tying up all your resources.
Yes. Or we can just cut it loose and lose $20,000. And so I chose the latter option where I'm like, I'm just going to lose $20,000.
That's hard for people to make those decisions. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like you do have to cut your losses, mm-hmm. you know, essentially. Yeah. And some people I think are stubborn. Yeah.
I think some people try and save it and then they end up losing more money in the long run or
in opportunity cost.
Yeah. Where it's like, oh, we can save this. We can save this. We can save this. So typically like we've found there's been a couple of times where we've been wholesaling a property. So our last loser was like late fall. So, it's 6 months ago. So that's good. That's really great for us. But that was one that we tried to wholesale. And one of the things that I've just learned is if I'm going to lose money on it wholesaling, I probably can't save it, flipping it. Mm. And so, we ended up only losing like 7 or 8K on it. So it wasn't terrible, but we were trying to wholesale it and all of the feedback was it's terrible. And the reason we were wholesaling it was because it wasn't a good house. Needed a big rehab. I still thought that there was room on it for somebody, but
that's most of the deals people get though.
Right? Yeah. I still thought
it's bad deals from wholesalers, right?
Yeah. Cause if it's a home run rehab, you're going to keep it yourself most of the time. But on this one, thought there was room, just nobody came back. And we decided like we had talked like, do we rehab it? And I think we might've been able to make a little bit of money, but I'm like, we could just cut our losses, lose $8,000 instead of spending. Cause I think we bought it for 70 and it was like $100,000 rehab and it was, worth 200, and after holding costs and realtor fees, we might've made $5,000. And I'm like, I'd rather lose $8,000 and buy us the time to go find a house that'll make us 35 or 40 grand versus tie up all of our resources to make $5,000. The opportunity cost.
What do you normally like factor in for like, okay, like you got rehab budget, you got closing costs, you got realtor fees. Do you have like percentages in your mind that you're thinking when you're analyzing those?
Yeah. We don't typically go off of this, but we kind of do our own analysis on it. But like the tried and true method for a lot of people is 75 to 80% of the ARV minus repairs and holding costs. So again, if you're buying a house for, it's a $200,000 house, it's a $50,000 rehab, say holding costs are another $10,000, you're going to want to be between $90,000 and $100,000.
We just got a $10,000 check from our mortgage company again.
Nice.
We'd already gotten like 20 grand last year. They just sent us another 10 grand. Like, did we overpay a lot in escrow? Like, why are we getting checks from our mortgage?
Don't complain. Just cash it. Don't complain. That's amazing.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You just got that?
Yeah. Sammy just sent me a text. I was like, why is she giving me like, I only check texts for my wife when I'm like doing different stuff. Cause I'm like, I want to make sure she doesn't have like an SOS for while they're getting put down. But I was like, what? That's weird.
Hey, 10,000.
I don't mind.
Cash it and run.
That's fun.
But, yeah. So that would be like the way that a lot of people tell you to do it. And I'm all for that. I think that's a great way to do it, but we're typically not even looking at that. Like I'm throwing in, hey, what is the ARV of this house? What is the rehab on it? What are holding costs going to be, which typically, we're paying 12% for our money. Insurance, taxes, it's not a ton, it's $1,000 a deal or something like that we're having to calculate for. And then I'm just playing with the offer to where it makes sense. So we'd love to be at like a 13 to 15% cash on cash return. Meaning like, hey, if we're putting $200,000 into this, we want to be making about $30,000. Does that make sense? 10% cash. Yeah. So if we're going to be all in for 200, we want to be making, $30,000 or something like that. So
yeah, that's great.
13 to 15% cash on cash. And that's a kind of, that's what we're looking at. That's kind of on the base when I was talking about like, hey, we have best, base, and worst. Most of the time we're hitting best case scenario because our rehabs are just so much better than anybody else's. And so we're selling typically setting the comp in the neighborhood when we flip a house. So most of the time we're at 20+% cash on cash return.
That's great.
I want to at least like on the base to be at 13 to 15% cash on cash return.
That's awesome. Is there anything else we missed that you feel like
would be helpful, beneficial?
Obviously you're going to like do some like YouTube stuff and like really break down some like,
I think it's definitely hard to comprehend talking about it.
Yeah.
Like there are like actually showing on a computer, hey, here's how you run comps. Here's
you
how
do a live deal analysis call, like what, how many, like once a week or for our clients.
So there's way more to it than just talking through it.
Sure.
People that are listening are like, I don't really know what he's even saying.
Yeah.
So you have to kind of see it in action, but
we'll have a random question before we finish up then.
Yeah.
So obviously DealFlow as a company, you're mentoring people, coaching people, like there's been a lot. You create a ton of content stuff. Have you decreased like Rebel City DealFlow, or is it about stayed the same?
No, we have decreased by choice.
Yeah.
But revenue is still going up.
About the same. It's going up.
Yeah, we're flipping more. And so like that means like when wholesaling, you're looking at, $10,000 to $15,000 spreads, but you don't have crews on them. You don't have to build the teams for the crews. So you can do 120 plus houses a year doing that. Flipping, it's like I would rather do 60 houses and make, $30,000 to $50,000 on those 60 houses than do 120 houses and make 10 to 15 houses. $1,000 on those houses. So that was kind of with interest rates changing and everything.
So deal volume decreased. Money volume increased.
Has increased. Okay. Yeah. Deal volume has gone down. And also we were selling a lot to hedge funds, and hedge funds have stopped buying. So like hedge funds that was like stealing candy from a baby.
Really?
Where they told us their buy box.
They make money sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
No, they were paying ridiculous prices. So it was so easy for me to go into a house, and I had relationships with all of the hedge funds and knew exactly what they were looking for. So when I walked a house, I was like, this is perfect for this hedge fund or this hedge fund. And I know their numbers. They shared with them because they wanted me to buy them houses. And so I could go in and just work in my spread and then buy it and then dispo it to a hedge fund in 10 minutes.
You're like, where are we going for our date night, honey?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that happened multiple times where it's like, hey, I locked up this house and, dispoed it to a hedge fund for $10,000 or $15,000 20 minutes later, and it's done with it. And hedge funds are always good on it. Were good for their money and knew exactly what they were doing. So, so with hedge funds not buying as much or at all, really, that's decreased our deal flow, or properties that we're buying, but we're still flipping a ton. So
yeah, it's awesome, dude. Mm-hmm. Well, it was fun, dude. I feel like I learned a lot. I honestly was just like, I don't know anything. So I'm just going to ask you as many questions as I want to ask you.
It was a good time.
Well, I hope this was fun for you guys, either watching or listening to the episode today. You know what you guys can do, by the way. If you have specific questions for Cameron that you want us to cover in topics on the podcast, you can leave comments. Okay. You can do more than just listen or watch. You can actually say, I would love to hear about XYZ from you guys. Because how fun would that be for us to hear from you, the listener or viewer, what you actually want us, Cam, to talk about? So why don't you do that? That would be awesome. You can, on the YouTube channel, you can leave some comments down below. Let us know some things. Comment on Cameron's very nice ripped biceps, or
it's not true, but it's coming.
Yeah,
it's coming.
I mean, you wear a tight enough shirt, and exactly. You don't even need big biceps.
And then you have a vest over the bad part. Yeah. Like you can trick a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. So you can comment on that, or in the podcast, like in Apple Podcasts, you can leave a rating and a review. In the review, you can say, man, Spencer and Cameron, they're such attractive people, and wow, they know a lot about things. And then underneath that, you can say, I would love to hear about XYZ. That'd be awesome. Would love that from you guys. And if you're enjoying this, obviously leave a rating, review, subscribe for some more content. Love you guys. See you on the next episode.
Peace.
Later.